Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to my studio here in Portland, Oregon. I'm happy to be home. It's a really beautiful, warm day here, so it's lovely to be back in the studio again, and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be painting the scene Understanding Blue, and I want to talk about a few of the things that have initially attracted me to this scene, and then some of the principles of painting, the foundations of painting that we're going to be thinking about and incorporating as we're painting. Just a couple of notes. I'm using a burgundy piece of Color Fix. I'm going to be working today at 12 by 12, so not too big. Here are my pieces of reference. This is my original photograph that I did the scene from, and this is my the original pastel that I created a number of years ago of this scene. Okay, I just want to point out a couple things about this. So this particular photograph, it has you know, a beautiful quality of light. I believe that I shot this in the morning sitting at a gas station looking at an empty field. So it's, you know, a pretty ordinary scene that just really caught my eye. I love when that happens. This kind of half shadow, it's in half shadow there, so half of the scene is in shadow and half of it's in light, really creates kind of this drama, and we've got the silhouetted foreground here. Now, a couple other things that I'm going to be thinking about. There's a lot of use of negative space in here in the tree trunks, and I love to do that. If you guys are familiar with my work and have worked with me at all, you know that I'm a big fan of using the negative shapes, and I'm going to be thinking about the intervals between these trees, the tree trunks, to make them a little bit more interesting. And you can see that I've kind of opened that area up a little bit compared to the photograph. So here I'm taking a little bit of artistic license to do that. To not, again, I'm not trying to improve on nature, I'm trying to make a good painting. Let's see, what else? I'm going to be using a fairly limited palette here. I entitled this piece Understanding Blue. Primarily because I ordinarily do not make too many blue skies in my landscape, but this one of course is blue. But there's some complexity in this blue. It's kind of more of an aqua blue. Up here at the zenith, I've chosen to gray it down just a tad, and of course I've got these bands of clouds that are kind of streaming behind the trees. Also, the composition is pretty simple. Notice that over here on the left-hand side, I went ahead and included this little silhouette of this other little tree or bush that's coming into the composition. And I think that that works. I think it's pointing into my little cluster here. So I'm going to leave that in what we're doing today as well. Now, as we're beginning painting, we're going to plan for the foliage shapes. That's really important. I want to plan for the foliage shapes. I'm also going to be thinking about keeping a lot of luminosity in these shadow shapes, so color and luminosity. I don't want my dark silhouettes to be just solid, dead color. I want them to have some vibrancy. I'm also going to be thinking about, since I'm going to plan for these foliage shapes, I'm going to be knitting the sky in and around my foliage. And what that's going to help me do is to create a believable space for my viewer to look into, and to create atmosphere in and around the foliage. I don't want just a flat, pasted on look of the trees, of the foliage. So that's where we're headed on this. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time on drawing, not too much. Today I'll try to go a little bit slower for you guys. I know on some of these live streams I get painting and I'm pretty fast, so I'll try to slow down and take a few breaks for you guys. So you can always chime in on the chat if you need me to slow down or need me to explain anything. Please let us know, because I can talk to you. Okay, all right, let's get started. All right, we're going to move the camera into the scene a little bit so you can get a better view. If you move it over to the side, move it in. Get real close so they can see so my hand.
Did you undo the zoom?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You've got to flip it over so she can see.
Yeah, let me see it. What do we got? I think that's pretty good. Good. I think that's good. Okay, great. We're ready to go. All right. One of the things that I like to do, I have a little habit of holding on to my photo reference in my hand. So I'm not going to do that today so that you can have a chance to see it all the while that I'm working. But just know that I really want to grab it and put it in my hand. All right, so let's see, that's not the blue spruce, that's something different. I want to get my blue spruce for drawing. So here it is down here. Can you guys see that, Mark? Can you pull the camera out just a tiny bit so that they get to see yeah, that's good. So now they can see that. Okay. Now the one thing I have here is I have this very fine grid laid over my piece here. That's going to assist me in my drawing. I'm going to go ahead and just divide my composition in half. That's going to help me just a little bit with the drawing. Real light, very, very light sketch there. So if I come down here and do this, divide it once again, and up here, that might help me even a little bit more, and I'll tell you why, because I can see that this ground plane is really all the way down here in this lower quadrant, and I would have a tendency to make it a little bit wider than that, and I don't want to do that. And likewise, maybe I will go ahead and, because I really like the placement of the trees that I've got, so I'll just go ahead and give myself that. Now, see, I'm going to use the side of my blue spruce here. So I'm giving myself a little bit of the shape, but I'm also letting myself have a little bit of the value here, because I know I want this darker down here at the bottom. Okay, here's my initial just pass at my tree shapes. And I'm going to keep in mind that as I'm working on this piece, it's not going to be exactly like my piece over here, but I'm going to come close. All right, again, see this little bit of dark here, little bit of dark here. I'm going to go ahead and say something about that right off the bat. This little grid helps me. One of the things I was concerned about was, gosh, I really like this placement, the interval. See here, here's 1, and here's 2, 1, 1, and then here's 3 kind of grouped close together. Kind of like music, you want an interesting interval between the shapes. And then I have a bigger space here. These two. And then a bigger space here. I'm kind of using a little bit of a broken line, like so, to do my drawing. That broken, kind of little bit more rugged looking line is makes the tree trunks a little bit more natural. Okay, then down here there's a little indication of some other kind of brush. I'm just going to set that in as a little bit of value for right now. Now I've got this other little grouping on the edge here, and I just want to get the height of those and come along, get this in there. And again, these intervals, I'm concerned about the intervals. Okay. So I want to look at this overall shape that I've got. It's doing pretty much the same thing as that original, and I like that. Now I want to put this little bush or whatever this is over here on the side. Okay, now with my blue spruce, I'm just going to go and get a little something for this dark shape. So what you see here is I've got a kind of a combination of line and value, and I've kind of done it simultaneously. So I would say I'm kind of through the drawing phase of the piece. Okay, now, always one of the hardest things is, okay, where do you start? What do you choose to do first? What color do you put down? So what I always want to be doing is massing together shapes of similar value. All right, that's easier said than done, right? How do I determine that a mass is of similar value? How do I average this out? Well, I can see when there's not a big shift, a hard line in here, that all of this can be one kind of value, just as an average. So I'm not going to be concerned with this and the hue shifts or this purple. I'm just going to get something in for the overall shape. So I think my trusty yellow 13 is going to be a good choice for that. So I'm going to come over here to my palette and grab one of those. It's this lovely, pretty bright gold. It's not too light, and it's not the lightest thing that I'm going to get in here. It's also not the darkest thing. It's kind of right in the middle. So I like that about it. So I'm going to come in here with a pretty broad stroke, but as I'm doing it, I'm not going to go in just one direction like so. I'm going to move my hand in quite a nice variety of directions. So I get an active, expressive mark making in here. Some big strokes. Not just this, not just that. I want some big strokes. I'm using, it's not a very big piece, but I can still get some big strokes. I'm using a light touch. And I'll say this a lot of times, I want to stay as thin as I can for as long as I can. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be some point that I'm going to press really hard and feel the tooth of the paper, because there will be. But right now, I'm just sneaking up on it. I'm just testing out, making sure that I've got everything rolling the way I want it to go. Okay, even over in here, I'm going to average out the value. Now, you can see that this is an area of my piece that could be tricky. You can see in the reference material, it's very light foliage, very wispy. And so I'm gonna be even more careful here to use a light touch and just kind of skitter this yellow over the surface of the paper and let some little bits of the burgundy show through, because that's where I'm gonna wanna knit the sky in. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna live with that, pretty much. Okay, there we go. So now the next thing that I'm thinking about is I have this sort of distant hillside that's kind of this greenish yellow back here. And I want to get that in, that's important to me. So I'm gonna pick something that's different than my gold. I think something about like that. I might want something just a tad darker. Yeah, it's just a little bit darker, so that, again, so that I have some place to go. I don't want to put the darkest area of that shape in. I want to be in the middle. So I'm going to come along here and I'm going to pick out, I'm going to skip around my tree shapes. So I'm using the little, this happens to be a blue earth pastel, and I'm going to skip around my trees. Also, I'm going to use the side like so, right here where I know I want this little idea of some bush or grass right there. Again, I'm going to skip around. And same thing in here. I'm not worried about some of the color coming into the edge here of the foreground. You know, I'm not painting by number, painting in the lines. But I am using these negative shapes, and I like that. It's fun. So I'm going to come around here, same thing. So already I can feel a sense of space and quality of light. I feel like this is a distant hillside that is in light and this is in shadow. Already I've got that kind of quality and sensation, so that's a good thing. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to get something a little tad darker for this foreground. And again, I want some luminosity in it. I don't want it to be just this solid silhouette. So I'm going to head to some of my Terry Ludwig's, because I know there's such beautiful rich darks. I think that's maybe a little too dark. You know, maybe I'm going to go ahead and bring some
Carla, what drives the decision of soft versus hard sticks? Like new pastel was used for the hard sketch and now it looks like softer ones are being used.
Right. I usually want to start with a harder pastel. They fill the tooth of the paper less. So that's not to say, I'm always going to err on the side of the value. So if for instance, right now I'm picking up a stick that is, I believe this is a Unison. It's really buttery and soft. And I want to use it right here. And I'm going to layer it over this blue spruce. It's a little bit softer than the blue spruce, so I know it'll go over it. But I'm still not anxious to fill the tooth of the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify my touch so that it just kind of goes over nicely without filling the tooth. So I'm just going to kind of really, really light touch, and I'm going to let it just drag in there. So on the whole, I am thinking hard to soft as I'm moving through my piece. But if I don't have the right value or the right hues, and I have to pick up something softer or harder than I want, what I do is I change the way I'm putting it down. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I'm going to come in with this same kind of reddish brown into the bottom of my trees here, so I can get that gradation, the half shadow, a couple of spots over here, and even up in here, there's a little bit of a form shadow on the tops of these. Okay. All right, so far I'm liking it. At this point, I probably need to think about getting some of that sky in, right? I've got this really light band of clouds in here to get in, and I have to decide on something for the sky. I think I want to get the light band of cloud in first. So that's going to be a big jump in value, right? It's going to be pretty dramatic. Again, I would like to choose something that's not the lightest thing that I'm going to use, but overall it's a lot lighter than what I've got down here. So it's going to be pretty dramatic as I come along. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick out some. Now you see, I'm not trying to do every little bit of grass here, but what I am trying to do is make some marks that I know are going to sort of be a shorthand for that grass. Okay. Now I'm going to come along here, do the same thing. I'm going to pick out, skip around the tree trunks, but I want to make sure I have some nice thick and thins. Now I can already go ahead and start playing with the idea of some sky holes. See that? See how nice that is? I mean, that's just already I've got a good quality of light. And you can see also that I'm not quite filling the tooth of the paper with the light color. Not yet. I know that I have lots of opportunity to do that, and I don't want to go full steam ahead on that quite yet. It's looking good. It's not exact as that, but I don't really want it to be that anyway. I'm getting the character that's this and this. Okay. Am I out of the way of the? Hope I am. Okay. It's a little bit of finesse here, taking a little bit of time. It's kind of nice to do. And then it just kind of dives into that. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get the second cloud shape in here. And that, it's a little bit above this center line. So I'm looking again at my grid. That helps me because I do like the intervals here, so of the clouds. And so I can come along and get some of these sky holes in. Now with these, the thing with sky holes is you want to have a variety of shapes. You don't want them, what I don't want to do is wind up with a pattern like this that's evenly spaced and all the same size, right? And then, you know, it's funny, we could work on it and think, oh, I didn't do that, but then sometimes it happens whether you mean for it to happen or not. So just gotta really pay attention to that. Now, over here, there's a little bit bigger shape. Okay, and then there's some smaller holes here. See how we're just knitting this sky in between our tree, our foliage mass. All right. So far we have, you know, very limited palette. That's good. Now it's time to just kind of dive into that aqua. And, you know, I really want to be careful. I don't want to go too dark. I'm going to look at the shift between this and this. So now, let's see. I want to see the shift between this and this and this. See, I think that's too much, just a little bit too much. So if I can find something that's not quite, I think that's better. I think I'll start there. Again, I want to get these little grasses going here. And some sky holes all the way across. Again, trying to vary the shape and the intervals. Hope everybody's doing okay. Bring this blue down. And I haven't filled the tooth of the paper completely yet. Still have the opportunity to do that. Okay, right now I'm feeling like I want more aqua. It's kind of almost too blue, so I am going to go ahead and bring some of this original. See, this is a little bit darker, a little bit more aqua, just a tad, nothing too dramatic. Get that in there. I'm going to come up Starting to get that quality of light that I want. All right. So now I'm going to go for it just a little bit more. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to fill the tooth of the paper just a little bit more here. Now, I really want more of a gradation of the sky from the horizon to the zenith sun. So I want it a little darker up there, darker still. So I need to shift again to a little bit darker aqua. So I'm going to come and just go for it a little bit with this little bit darker aqua and marry these two together, knowing that I'm going to bring something over the top of it. I don't know exactly when I'm going to do that, but I know that I want that. So okay, it's looking good. So I'm using the whole side of my stick here, real nice and bold. Go ahead and fill it in just a bit. You know, I'm not filling the tooth completely, but I'm trying to get a little bit of a consistent texture throughout my piece. The sky can be a little bit smoother, but you know, I've got some texture in here. I got some texture in the sky. So that's all good. I just want a consistent thread in terms of the texture throughout the whole piece, so that it looks like it all fits together. So when I look at it, it doesn't look like, oh, that area is so much more blended than the rest. Okay, this area I want it to be even lacier, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more blue in here. I'm going to come back over this with some more yellow, some different yellow, but I'm still painting really pretty thinly here, even here, so I'll have the opportunity to do that. That's not going to be a problem. Okay, I want to make sure I have a good gradation all the way across. All right. Okay. Okay, I think this is a good spot to take a little bit of a rest. I'm liking the quality of light pretty much. So the next thing I think is another pass at the foliage. I want it to be a little bit lighter up here, so I'm going to pick something that is a little bit lighter. What do we want? Maybe something that's a little bit, this one is also, it's a little bit lighter. It's than the yellow 13. It's also a little greener. So it's a little cooler. And now I'm moving it around to find a good spot on the pastel. It's kind of an odd shaped, it's a little stick that's been split in half. So I need to find the spot on it that I can use. So I think I've got it. I've got it working pretty well, so I'm going to go ahead and just layer that over the yellow 13. So this tree is a little bit more in the light than this one back here, so I think I want to say that. Using a variety of kinds of strokes again. You can even get some little dots and dashes in here if you want. It's kind of fun. Okay, I'll come over here to this guy. Really, I actually right now I'm liking the quality of light better in the one I'm doing for you than what I have over here. It's a little more dramatic. So I'm going to try to see if I can pull it off. Todd, I don't know if you want to address it, but the built-in memory is full. That's what it says. So, yeah, I don't know either. So, that's okay. Okay, I'm liking that. Now I want to do something a little bit more fun in that foreground. So I'm going to pick out some nice bright purple. It's pretty chromatic. See, it's brighter than the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag that in to this foreground shape. Again, using a nice active stroke. Big strokes. And I'm going to pull some of that down here in the bottom of my trees in the darks. And maybe even over here.
Valerie says, I can't quite seem to find the same aqua similar to your choice. Would you share the brand name?
Yeah, these are Terry Ludwig's. And Terry has, I need to clean my hands off. Terry has some amazing aquas in his line. So yeah, if you're searching for aquas, he's a really good one to look for. Okay, at this point I want to start adding on a little bit color. In my original here, I definitely had some more rust in here, and I like that about it. So I'm going to find a couple things that will work for that. I'm thinking this kind of, it's this pretty simple rust color. And I'm not wild about that sky hole right there. It's awfully big for what I'm wanting right there. So I'm going to diminish that just a little bit. And come up in here.
Marla Kath says, when you take your reference photos, do you instantly think about how you're going to paint the scene?
No. No, I don't. It takes me a while to figure out what I'm going to do. Like, for instance, I just got back from a trip, and I have, hundreds of photographs to pour through, and I will do that. It will take me quite a while to start deciding, what I want to tackle first, and what I'm. Gosh, it was amazing. So no, I don't. But what I do is I'm mentally, I break the scene down mentally before I paint. So what are the how can I see the shape simply? How can I see it as simply as I possibly can? I have a couple of videos on that. I think it's, I'll have to think about what they are. Do you remember, Chris? There's that one that I break down the shapes mentally. And actually I'm putting together a PowerPoint video for you guys from my IAPS presentation. If you weren't there, I put together a presentation where I talked exactly about that very issue, how I first think about the painting before I even do a thumbnail, before I'm even at that thumbnail stage.
I think it's called Don't Be a Slave to Your Photo Reference. Is that the one?
I'm not sure. It might be Making a Plan. I'm not sure. But as you could see, I'm starting to work on this area here, the negative shapes. Now you see I'm going in and designing these little shapes, and I'm softening some of the edges as I'm doing it, because I want that in this. I want some of these little edges to be softer. I'm going to bring in a little bit more color. Wow, I'm going to pick up this bright orange right now. Woo! It's bright, but I'm just going to use it really kind of sneakily. I'm going to sneak that in there. Just a little teeny bit to give that a little bit more heat. Okay, I'm going to keep going and design these shapes all in here. Now I'm going to go with a little bit more aqua because I'm feeling like I need to come up. Yeah, aqua is important. I use aqua a whole lot. So I have a lot of aqua in my palette. I prefer it. I think of it as a warm blue, and I prefer it to a more ultramarine blue. So if I am going to make a blue sky, it's likely to be aqua. So you see I'm just going through and kind of designing these little shapes, making sure I have a nice variety, filling the tooth of the paper a little bit more in some spots, making sure that these branches, I have branches, I have trunks, I have little tendrils, so that I really get that flavor in the tree. Going back and forth between the positive and the negative shapes. Now it's really easy to get, like right here, really easy for me to get stuck on this spot because I'm struggling a little bit with this spot. But I'm not going to do that. I never want to do that. I want to keep moving, always keep moving throughout my piece. The minute you kind of stop, you lose the thread of the whole. So you want to keep going. All right, now I'm not going to finish all of this just yet. Want to play with this sky a little bit more. I'm going to fill in a little bit more of the tooth of the paper and the sky. I'll go ahead and do that. But what I want to do right now is I want to make some adjustments to some of the values here. I think that this wants to be a little bit lighter. So I started out with this kind of darker value. So I'm going to go ahead and right now and pull in something a little bit lighter, drag it right over the top of that. And just like I did before, I'm going to pick out whoop. Because I really want that real dramatic difference in value of what's here in the shadow and what's in the light. Okay. Now I'm pressing pretty hard. Whoop, I got that too much of an angle, I think. I want it to be a little more upright. Okay.
Looking at 10 minutes.
Oh, really? Whew. Okay. Hope everybody's doing okay. Don't worry about it if you haven't got all of this knitted together, and that's okay. You can always go back and spend some time with it there. Primarily, you just want to get the values in the right relationship. And that's the most important thing. I'm going to go ahead and redraw some of these tree trunks. Being very careful. Okay. So right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring a little bit more blue spruce down in here in this shadow shape, but I'm not going to bring it all the way to the top edge. I'm just bringing it up from the bottom so there's a little bit of a gradation. And now back right here I have some light hitting the ground. So I want to get that in there. And that's not even quite light enough. I need to go a little bit lighter, I think. And I'm going to soften that edge. Use, okay, this guy. Just kind of come in there. And just a couple spots that just sort of say that it's just kind of spilling into this cast shadow, or the foreground shadow. All right. Pressing a little bit harder, filling the tooth of the paper in this where the cloud shape is a little bit more. And, okay. Oh, the thing that I want to do before we part for sure, even if we don't get it completely done, is I want to get that little bit darker value up there in the on the top of the sky, because I'm going to head to something a little maybe unusual. I'm going to pick this kind of soft gray, and I'm going to drag that over the top here. So what that's doing is, so I've got these two now gradations happening. I've got the gradation of the trees from dark to light, and the gradation of the sky countering that. And I think that that's pretty interesting, and makes it much more dramatic. Yeah, I like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just blend the sky just a tiny bit. I'm using just the side of my finger, barely hitting the surface of the paper, just blending just a tiny bit. You hardly ever see me do that, right? But here I'm just getting rid of a little bit of the texture, just a little bit too much for me. Softening some of these edges. Now I want to spend a little bit more time with this grass here. Get a little bit more playful with what's happening there. Maybe even bring in some more of this. This is a Terry Ludwig. Some dots and dashes, so we really know that's kind of different. Couple last things. I'm still feeling not quite happy with this distant, the value of this distant guy. So I'm going to lighten it up even more right at the top. So it has also has a slight gradation. Okay, I'm liking that better. Get some little marks in here. It might be nice to have one more pass with some even lighter lights on the trees. So I'm going to pick something really bright and light. I've got this really, really bright yellow, and maybe just hit a couple spots up here. This is a thick, a buttery pastel. I'm pretty sure that it's a Sennelier, so it's very buttery. So it's going to work really nice for this last sort of pass. It's going over the top of the harder layers, and it does it very well. And that's nice. That gives it just a little bit of pizzazz, I think. here. Now, one thing that I like about this piece here is there are some tree trunks, white tree trunks that peek out, and I think I would like to get some of that in. I'm still picking around on the edges of the trees, designing these shapes and thinking about those tree trunks. Okay, so what I need is something pretty hard and light. So I'm going to head to a new pastel that's very light in value. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of use the one of these corners of it. I don't want to draw a line like so. I want to use the edge of it and sort of drag it with a broken line down to indicate an idea of some tree trunks in here, some that are the light is hitting. And I'm going to come over in this guy and do the same thing, just a little broken line. Up into here. And a couple spots even over here. And I want to scan my piece and see if there's anything that's sticking out that's really not working, not fitting with everything else. I want to do that really carefully, and I do that with all my pieces. I want to make sure that I've paid equal attention to everything. That does not mean equal emphasis. It means I've looked at every mark essentially and resolved it. If it needs some more blending, if it needs to be redesigned, to the best of my capability. Okay, so I think it must be about time, right? Are we there?
Yeah, 4:58.
Okay, so I think we're just about there with it. There are a few little tweaky things I would like to see, slightly different, but I think overall it's got a nice quality of light, and that's the main thing that I was after. I really love that glow. Let's see, I'm going to bring this down just a tiny bit. But I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and let me know how you did, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye guys.